Hello everyone, it's Blue Dart, and welcome to the DartCraft 1.6 Mod Spotlight. Now if you don't know who I am, I'm actually the mod author of DartCraft. And I know I've already done a mod spotlight of DartCraft, but I've changed almost everything so significantly that I really have to do another mod spotlight. So, here we go. Now, at the moment, I am actually in a legitimate single-player world that I've been playing for the past few days. Now, before you really get started in DartCraft, the first thing you're going to be able to do is make yourself a clipboard. This thing's relatively cheap, as it only costs some wood, an iron ingot, and some paper. And what this thing can do is, when right-clicked, it's essentially a portable crafting table. But the nice thing about this is that once you fill it with ingredients, you can actually close it and reopen it, and it keeps its inventory. That's the clipboard for you. It also has a few function buttons, one for, say, item distribution, another called the Smart Assist key, which will actually take up to 2 items and distribute them evenly in this crafting matrix. Or, if there are already items all along the side, it will simply rotate them. And of course, this little button down here, which will put every item from the clipboard into your inventory. As an added bonus, you can now look up a recipe in NEI, and left-click or shift-left-click on the Recipe Inquiry button, and it will actually fill in the ingredients from your inventory, if it can, as well as placing NEI's patented silhouettes behind the slots. And of course, if you have the clipboard on your hotbar, and you press the clipboard hotkey, which defaults to C, it will actually open the clipboard for you, if you're not already inside a GUI. Now, without getting yourself DartCraft's one and only ore, that's basically the only thing you really can do from DartCraft. But once you find yourself some power ore, this stuff right here, you can mine it up with a pick, and get 2 to 4 force gems per piece. Now, I ended up getting more than 2 or 4 force gems per ore because I had fortune on this pick. But without fortune, the max you'll get is 2 or 4 per ore. Now, these force gems can be crafted into force ingots using various recipes ranging from vanilla iron and gold ingots to any forge-registered bronze, refined iron, silver, steel, and even new DartCraft ingots called mob ingots. We'll talk about these later. Now, on the subject of gems and ingots, you can actually squeeze force gems in forestry squeezers to get 1.5 buckets of liquid force. You can also use the carpenter with liquid force and any of the aforementioned ingots that output force ingots to make them in the carpenter as well. Now, it's worth noting that only 3/4 of a bucket of liquid force is used when making force ingots in this manner, making it much more efficient than crafting them by hand. Now, what can you do with these force ingots? Well, of course, like any other ingot, you can craft many things out of them. Now, with force ingots, you can make basic force tools with these, ranging from swords, to pickaxes, to shovels, to axes, and a few other things. However, it's worth noting that, with the exception of the shears, you'll be needing force rod before you can do anything serious. Now, a force rod is made from simply an ingot, a stick, and a nugget. Now, the first force rod you craft is going to be heavily damaged, and only has a few uses on it. Now, the force rod serves to force transmute various items into other items. If you'd like to know the full list of transmutations, you can actually look them up in NEI now. We can see that we can take an oak sapling and turn it into a force sapling. Now, this is actually one of the first things you have to do. Once I have that sapling, I simply wait for it to grow, or in my case, bone meal it up, into a beautiful forest tree. To help assist with farming, I have added a tool called the Force Mitts, and this acts much like a sickle would on leaves, and grass, and even on crops, with the added benefit of being a good shovel, axe, and hoe. Once you harvest this wood, you can use them to make force planks. You can also smelt them into golden power source, which is a charcoal alternative that smelts 10 things instead of 8. You can take 2 force planks and make force sticks out of them instead of vanilla sticks. While these force sticks can be used in any recipe that requires the Ore Dictionary's stick wood, they can also be used to make various DartCraft tools. The force bow requires force sticks to make, as do the various block-breaking tools such as the force pick and shovel, force arrows, which are required to use the force bow, and of course a force rod with absolutely no durability used. To demonstrate, I'll make a force shovel. Now, force tools by default have about the breaking speed of iron tools, with twice their durability. However, the force pickaxe, shovel, axe, and shears all have something called area mode, which can be activated when right-clicked, or shift right-clicked for the shears. When breaking a block in this mode, it will take much longer. However, once the block is actually broken, all blocks in a 3x3 area go with it, at the cost of additional durability. This feature is inherent in these force tools and does not require any upgrade to function. Now, one of the more sinister yet useful force tools can also be crafted as soon as you get yourself force ingots, the force shears. These shears have a special function. They'll actually work on chickens, and you'll get feathers, one for each chicken that you shear. Don't worry about harming the chickens, though. Eventually, they'll eat grass and magically regrow their skin, much like sheep. Of course, a bit more disturbing is that it actually works on some other creatures, too, like this unsuspecting cow. And they, too, will also eventually regrow their skin. Somehow. Now, the most recent addition to these shears is actually the ability to shear pigs and receive raw bacon. Now, you can eat raw bacon, but you're much better smelting it into cooked bacon, as raw bacon will poison you. Cooked bacon will restore 1 meat stick at a saturation value of 0.8. Since we were just on the subject of farming, I'm going to bring up a tool that I recently added, called the Force Flask. Now, Force Flasks have been in DartCraft for some time. However, previously they stacked and were quite a bit cheaper. However, as you can see, they now have a 3D model to them and actually function in the way that I intended them to so long ago. Now, what's really nice about these is they can help immensely getting all the animals you need together in one place. Simply left-click an entity, like this chicken, and it'll bottle it. And he's just in there. He's in there good. I'll bottle his friend, and now I have 2 bottled chickens. If I want to let him go, I simply right-click, and there he is. He's free. Now what this means is I can simply make a fence, go find some chickens, and then just drop them in. Now if you want to bottle a hostile, it's a bit trickier. Hostile entities won't actually go into the bottle unless they're below 10% health. So as you can imagine, it can be very difficult, if not nearly impossible, to bottle certain hostile entities. Now one more tool I'd like to talk about before I get into upgrading. I'm going to craft something here called a force pack. Now the force pack, once right-clicked, will open an interface that has 8 slots to store items. Now these force packs are actually upgradable in size, as evidenced by the fact that my patented tool satchel actually has 40 slots in it. This is the maximum size for a force pack. Also note that if you sneak, right-click a force pack, it will actually bring up an interface that you can name and color by left or right-clicking this little color icon down here, and clicking Save, and now I have a green tutorial pack. Now to upgrade this, I'm going to need something called a Force Infuser. So without further ado, let's make one. Previously, Force Infusers were made by right-clicking a block of obsidian with a force rod. However, since this was incredibly exploitable, you can no longer do this in the world, and instead you should use this shapeless crafting recipe to make yourself a Force Infuser. Simply place this down, anywhere you wish, and right-click it. You'll see this interesting interface. There's an information tab here you can click on that will give you random tips about DartCraft, or occasionally random quips about, well, nothing really. But as this error tab will indicate, you'll need an upgrade tome in the top leftmost slot to get anything useful done. How do we make one of those? This is where the new Info Sub GUI comes into play. By simply clicking the question mark button, it will actually bring up a useful list with information and eventually upgrade information, tips, and hints. To start off, it actually has several basic pieces of information about DartCraft inside it. By left-clicking in one of these slots, it will show you the information on that particular item. Many questions about DartCraft can be answered simply by reading through all of this information. By default, there are already several pages. If you press the previous and next page buttons, it will actually scroll through valid pages. Without a tome in here, there are 2 valid pages already. So this thing needs an upgrade tome. Now we can see in NEI that the shapeless crafting recipe is a force rod and a book to get an upgrade tome. We can't actually use this force rod to transmute this book at the moment because it is at max durability. These shapeless recipes will not allow you to break a force rod. If you wish to use the last durability of any rod, you must actually transmute the item in the world. And that rod broke into a force shard. Most DartCraft tools break into force shards, which I will mention shortly. Now that we have an upgrade tome, simply shift-click it into the Infuser, and it goes into the top left slot. Now immediately what has changed in this GUI is one additional slot in this GUI has become available. Also, if we check the Info tab, after the basic information, we now have new objects that simply have question marks on them and are darkened out. It states that this is an unknown upgrade, and it gives a small tip about what this item is. We can see that we have 4 such upgrade materials in total available to us now. We must use all 4 of these materials before we can upgrade our tome to use more useful materials. This upgrade tome will eventually gather enough points to upgrade to another tier. We see here that it starts off at 0 force points, and the next tier happens at 96 points. Now, the only caveat to this is the next tier will not occur until we use every grayed out material and acquire enough points. This option is, of course, configurable, and you can disable the need to use every upgrade material. Now, coming into my base that I've already made, you'll see that I already have a tome that I've worked on for a significant amount of time. I'm going to place in the tutorial tome that I just made. Now, the Force Infuser, before it can actually infuse anything, requires liquid force. We can see over here there's a tank that is capable of storing 50 buckets of liquid force. To store liquid force in here, we simply either pipe it in from a squeezer, which I recommend, or we can take the force gems that we mine and place them in this slot. The Force Infuser is capable of extracting 1 bucket of liquid force from each force gem. Other sources of liquid force are force shards, which will also give 1 bucket of liquid force in any device that can accept liquid force. It should be noted, however, that force shards have the ability to give additional points to the upgrade tome. In fact, each force shard that is added to the internal tank of liquid force, while an upgrade tome is present inside the Infuser, will give an additional 10 points to the upgrade tome. Other sources of liquid force are buckets of force, which can be found in dungeons, or placed in the Infuser and infused into a bucket of force, which takes a bucket from the internal storage. This liquid force is now placeable in the world as a legitimate liquid. There are a few properties inherent to liquid force, which I'll let you discover for yourself. In addition to liquid force, the Infuser requires Minecraft jewels to function. Now, even without BuildCraft installed, Minecraft jewels may be achieved by using a new item called the Force Engine. The Force Engine is, of course, crafted with the standard engine recipe using force ingots and force gears, and force engines are capable of running on liquid force, among other things. The left slot is a slot in which you place force engine fuels, such as liquid force. As we can see, a bucket of liquid force will give 1 full bucket of liquid force in the leftmost tank. The right tank is actually a tank called the throttle. The force engine is unique in that, even though it can run safely without ever exploding, it will run inefficiently if you do not throttle it with one of several liquids. Water would be the easiest throttle, but I have chosen milk as my effective throttle, as it is relatively easy to acquire at this stage in the game. Now, turning this engine on, we'll actually see that it tells us what the output is. Output Minecraft joules per tick is now 10. The throttle is 2.5. What this means is the liquid force, which would normally output 4 Minecraft joules per tick, is now outputting 10 because it is being throttled at 2.5 times its value. The throttle value of water is 2. So running liquid force with water as a throttle would give you 8 Minecraft joules per tick. By default, liquid force lasts for 20,000 ticks in the force infuser, but this can be configured to be lower or higher. The throttle is used up at a much faster rate. If a throttle is not present, the force engine will still function. However, it will simply function inefficiently. But as I said, the force engine will never explode. It's worth noting that most fuels that can be used in a BuildCraft combustion engine can also be used in the force engine at 1/2 the output value. Of course, if you throttle it with water, the output value would be the same. Or with milk, the output value would be greater. There is, of course, one more throttle, and that is crushed ice from forestry. For my own personal setup, I simply am using BuildCraft pipes to power these 3 objects, this squeezer, carpenter, infuser. Now that we have both liquid force and Minecraft joules inside the infuser, we can start infusing things. This is where the Info tab comes in handy. Now, the Infusion Mechanics have changed slightly in that it is far more linear than it used to be. Simpler if you know what you're doing, as you do not have to make quite as many tools, but a bit more difficult in that you must use certain materials to advance your tier. Now, after figuring out which upgrade materials you need to advance your tome and tier, you simply take one of the various force tools that are upgradable in this interface and place it in the middle slot here to be upgraded. If it does not go into this slot, it cannot be upgraded. Now, once you figure out which materials you need, simply shift-click them or place them in here manually. This little arrow down at the bottom here will become available. You can then click it. Once you click it, it will start going, and there's no stopping this. Although you could force wrench it to stop it. Now, that gave knockback 1 and sharpness 2 on this force sword. I cannot upgrade this force sword again. However, I could infuse it with liquid force to increase its lifespan. I'll talk about that later. Going back to the Info tab, we'll actually see that 2 of the grayed out items are now visible. The upgrade here is visible, force. We see that it is a tier 1 upgrade, and the max level is 2. So I could have placed up to 2 knockback on my sword. Once we unlock these other 2 upgrades, we'll actually advance our tome in tier, because each time you unlock an upgrade by using it the first time, it gives you a bonus of 25 points, in addition to however many points are given by that material. Now that I have made my second tool, and used the other 2 upgrades available, and my upgrade tome has enough points to upgrade in tier, it has done so. It is now tier 2. We can see that there is an additional slot for an upgrade material, and the Info tab has gained 5 additional items. Now, in this version of DartCraft, I specifically went out of my way to require certain upgrade materials at certain tiers. Now, this unknown upgrade material is actually a bottle of enchanting, and the only way to get it in DartCraft is to actually force transmute an enchanted book. I actually have to make an enchanting table. So, to get your tome to tier 3, you are required to have an enchanting table, or you must find an enchanted book somewhere in a dungeon. You must actually drop the book and force transmute it in this fashion, as the shapeless recipe will not work for this. Now, as we can see in here, this is an upgrade material, but the only thing the bottle of enchanting will actually go onto is a book. This will give something called an experience tome. Now, I have already made one of these for myself. When you mouse over it, you see it tells you how much experience it has. It comes with 0 experience. When you right-click an experience tome, it'll pull out 10 experience and give it to you. If you hold right-click, it will slowly continue to give you experience. If you shift right-click, it will take 10 experience away from you and continue until you stop holding the button. In this way, you can save your experience and keep it safe somewhere should you perish for some noobish reason. I'm going to mention a specific upgrade material now because it actually has a unique function that you may get some enjoyment out of. This is a tier 2 upgrade, and what you need is a cookie and some paper to get fortune cookies. Now, simply eat the fortune cookie, and you will receive a fortune, which you can right-click to get a random nugget of wisdom. Or, if you're tired of nuggets of wisdom, you can simply force transmute them into a stackable version for easy storage. Now here's something interesting. Tier 2, it says, ready to advance. Under normal circumstances, this tome would already be Tier 3, but I actually need to use one more upgrade before it will advance to Tier 3. Now, we were going to revisit force packs at this point, because the upgrade actually has to do with force packs. Once you get your tome to Tier 2, you can actually use force flasks, one at a time, to upgrade the storage inside your force packs by 8 slots. Since that has advanced my tier to Tier 3, I can do this one more time. And now this tutorial pack has 24 slots inside it. Now, don't worry about taking the items out of these when you upgrade them, because the items will stay intact. Now that we have grown to Tier 3, we see that we actually have several more upgrade materials. We have question mark, other question mark, and 3 more question marks. This particular upgrade material right here is going to give you some trouble. It appears to be some sort of dust left behind by a flask-wielding lunatic. What I will tell you is it has to do with creepers, and you can't use Bane. Now, back to force packs briefly. There's an item called the item card. Now, you can rename these too, in the same way that you would rename a force pack. You can right-click to get the small 16-slot GUI. Now, in the item card, you can actually left-click to place phantom items. And these phantom items don't do anything by themselves, but if you right-click the phantom items, you'll be able to change that particular item slot's mode, from an up arrow to a down arrow to nothing. If an up arrow is present on a card, just take the tutorial pack here, and I'm going to place the stick stalker I just made inside there. Now, what that's going to do, when you go to pick up an item, is going to place it inside this pack, because it said, hey, you have the yellow up arrow, which means to suck the item in. So it did so. Now, this blue arrow actually means to restock. So, if I had, say, 1 force stick in my inventory, then it will actually attempt to restock however many force sticks it can from its internal storage. Now, while force sticks might not be useful, I do have another one that I use for cobblestone, dirt, sand, gravel, netherrack, all the mining junk that I get. And I also told it to keep cobblestone and dirt restocked on my inventory if I have some in there. So let's say I have a bunch of cobblestone and dirt in here. Remember, this thing is set to take in cobblestone and dirt, and also to restock it. Now what it's going to do is it's going to restock however many stacks that you have in your inventory that are not full stacks. I had 1, and you could see it filled that 1 stack of cobblestone in. Now if I use more cobblestone, it will actually restock it from the internal storage, every few seconds. And when I pick up more cobblestone, it goes right into the pack, because I don't have a second stack of cobblestone. Now, item cards can be used for more than just taking in or restocking items. Now, this pack is actually configured to take in monster drops, as we can see. However, the second item card, which is yellow, was actually upgraded with the force upgrade in the Infuser to make this variation of item card. The interesting thing about this variation of item card is you can place items in the left 3x3 area, and anything that is a valid force transmutation will actually show the force transmutation result on the right. So let's say we find an empty bucket in a dungeon chest. If we break the chest and pick this item up, it went into the force pack and got transmuted into 3 iron ingots. Now these item cards actually have a few other upgrades for these. At the moment there are 2. One of them is crafting, which turns this inventory into an actual crafting inventory. As we see when we open this, we can place items inside this in a recipe formation, and it will actually show the output of the recipe on the right. Now if we place this inside a pack, and we were to say have it take in the cobblestone, it has crafted the cobblestone into 8 furnaces. Now this should work for basically any recipe, so get creative. Now, when an item card is present inside a force pack, and it wants to take in items, if you right-click on a chest, it will actually attempt to dump the items inside it into that chest. This will actually work with any inventory, so it'll work with barrels, it'll work with furnaces, it'll work with squeezers, what have you. Now, if a card is actually set to Restock Mode, then it will do the exact opposite. So if I right-click on this chest, it took all the cobblestone and dirt from that chest and placed it in here. So if you configure your item cards correctly, these can be amazing inventory management tools.